Nearly 50% of all Pokemon cards ever printed have been printed within the past 4 years. And these numbers are coming from the official figures report released by the Pokemon Company. I will link the PokeBeach article down in the description. And this report is from March, and they have upped printing since then. More and more reprints have been announced, and we have a lot more cards on the way. Now, this video is a bit of a reaction to the last video that I posted where I said that the Pokemon Company is essentially fixing the problem themselves by printing, not to demand, but printing towards demand. Increasing printing so people can find products, so consumers are happier, and they protect their own image in that way. This is something they've done before, and it has worked. A lot of it is just anecdotal evidence, but back in the days of Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze, even Fusion Strike, when those reprints hit, the hobby had already seen a bit of an exodus of those 2020 to 2021 pandemic speculators, and I literally got my copies of those ETBs, well, pointing this way, from a Walmart. I just went into a Walmart. They had full shelves of Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze, Fusion Strike, and as a sealed collector, I was able to pick up a couple of each. And I'll put the graphic up here just so you can see how much the Pokemon Company has been ramping up production since around 2014 to meet the demand of their highly popular product. Now, looking at these numbers, you would think that this would counter my argument from the last video that if the Pokemon prints more and people are able to find it, it will correct the market, because they have been printing more year over year, more and more, and demand is still going up. Scarcity is still an issue. And yeah, Pokemon is becoming more and more popular. The way the Pokemon Company has handled their own product has made it available as an investment for people. They see it as an alternative to stocks, no matter how volatile they may be. More and more people are entering the hobby. Even people that jumped in just to make a quick buck found that they actually like the cards and they've stuck around. You have new generations of kids being introduced to the product, not through the Pokemon anime or through the games like a lot of us were, but through streamers and YouTube channels where people just open packs and they create hype around the product itself and the franchise. And there is room in this hobby for everyone. Players, collectors, people that just enjoy watching those streams. Everyone is welcome. I think a lot of the animosity in the fandom right now and in the community is people entering the space that don't fall into any of those categories. People that are purely investing, people that are just purely speculating, people that are more interested in making money than actually enjoying what the rest of us do, the franchise and the characters and the games themselves. So back on topic, the Pokemon Company has been printing a lot of cards, more cards than ever. That's probably going to continue to ramp up as demand doesn't seem to have diminished at all this far into their heavier printing cycle. And here is where my personal disclaimer comes in. I ain't a fucking wizard. I can't predict the future. I don't know where this market's going. Everything I'm saying is just based on my observation, my anecdotal evidence, and my time spent within this hobby, which has been every year since 1998. I've seen ebbs and flows. I have seen peaks and valleys within the trading card game. But honestly, I have not seen the market in the same type of place that it is right now, and neither has the Pokemon Company. In the past, when they have ramped up printing and they have put product on the shelf, it did have an effect. As I mentioned earlier, there have been times where people become disinterested. It even happened just a couple years ago, around the time of Twilight Masquerade. Those booster boxes were selling for $100 just because people had lost interest from the big pandemic boom, and the prices of everything were trending down. But then Big Pikachu came out, Big Greninja came out. We're seeing another boom with TCG Pockets release as people are entering the fandom, playing the card game for the first time and realizing that it's actually fun and that they want to open packs in real life and play the cards in real life. And that's amazing, both for the community but also for the Pokemon Company, because their strategies are working. They're making lots of money off of the investments they've put into so many different apps. We just had the World Championships and there were more people playing than ever. There were more people flocking there to spectate than ever. So much so that next year there's an entire convention attached to the World Championships. An absolute dream for a lot of Pokemon fans. And yes, even at the World Championships, rampant scalping, people losing their minds, just trying to get in here, trying to buy up all the merch that they could. A lot of toxic stuff that does exist within the fandom, and that frustrates a lot of us. But we can't overlook that to see how great it is to have so many people entering the community just to enjoy it. So yeah, there's no predicting what comes next because it's kind of unprecedented to have this much product out in the wild and prices seemingly unaffected. And yeah, it's gonna take maybe a couple years for the things that are in process now to really have an effect. People keep expecting a big crash. Earlier this year, I was hoping for a crash end of 2025, but now that I've seen the types of cards that they are putting into these mega sets, moving into the 30th anniversary where I know they're going to have some big stuff planned, I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't know if it's going to happen by the end of next year unless they just absolutely flood the market, which I don't think that they will. I think that the effects of this printing towards demand will be seen in later years. And one of the big reasons for that is because of sealed collecting. I'm guilty. I got them over there. I like sealed products on my shelf. I keep them because I want to open them at a later date without having to completely bust open the piggy bank. But right now, so many people are hanging on to sealed product that whenever the market does dip or we enter some type of global economic crisis, which could happen, who knows? Like I said, I ain't a fucking wizard. People will begin to sell off all of that sealed product. So a lot of what is seen as scarce product right now isn't as scarce as we think because people are just holding it. And some people are holding it big time, like they have hundreds of ETBs sitting in a warehouse somewhere. They're just waiting for the next peak of the market, trying to sell all of them off at those highs. Or, like me, just hold them for another 20 years and see what happens. But I think at some point in the future, we will see a lot of this product re-enter the market. So the takeaway from that is that even though the Pokemon is ramping up printing, more and more product is coming out there, it's not like all of that product is being enjoyed in the Pokemon Company's intended way. But there is a lot more of these products out there than you realize. They've just been scooped up and taken somewhere that is unavailable to us. Speaking of the secondary market, I did get a lot of comments on that last video saying, no, in the short term, it may work, but to overprint the cards will make rare cards too available and will hurt the value of those cards for collectors. You can't really call a card rare if everyone has it. Another one, fixing the market by crashing singles prices makes them all worthless. Those are true. But we haven't seen that yet. So the more and more product that gets opened, and right now we are seeing more product being opened than ever before because of the popularity of streams and rip and ship. But this is a huge unknown. I understand that if you pay $100 for a rare card, you want that card to hold its value. As a collector, you don't want to feel jilted if, the market gets flooded and that card decreases to $40. It feels bad. But there's also an aspect of being a responsible collector, watching the market, paying attention to trends, and buying those cards when you feel they are at the value that you would pay for it. I've mentioned this in previous videos that Misty Psyduck from Destined Rivals, I have been watching that card like a hawk since it released. And what I found with that card is that I could buy a slabbed 9 of that card cheaper than I could find on TCG Player for a raw card. I could buy a slabbed 9 for $50 when the cheapest raw card on TCG Player was $55. And so I said, you know what? That is actually what I would value that card at as a slab. Because as a collector, I don't care if it's a Gem Mint 10. I'm not worried about that. That's my personal preference. I just want a nice copy of the card protected in a slab that I can just pull out of a case and look at every now and then. So much like I anticipate with sealed product, we may also see a huge influx of singles in the future if more sealed product goes to market and more people are opening packs and we are flooded with singles. then yeah, it's going to bring the prices down for a lot of cards because that scarcity will slowly be stripped away. So while I agree that this could be a future problem where card prices absolutely tank for singles, I think in the long run, the price for a lot of the big chase cards will remain relatively high. I mean, Mewtwo, Pikachu, Charizard, Greninja, Lucarios, Gardevoirs, Gengars, these are all cards that are going to maintain value. It's just being a responsible collector, watching those charts, and buying at a time where you recognize that is what I value that card at, and that is what I'm willing to pay. So to address another comment, yep, then the LGSs go out of business and are the ones who get murdered financially. None of the big box stores contribute to the community, and Pokemon refuses to allow LGSs to have direct purchasing from their big box stores. This is something I do agree with. I think that these types of practices over time will kill the local game store unless the Pokemon Company does figure out a way to take control of their own distribution. And something that has been a big indicator of a weird change to me is that, prior to the past couple of years, even during the pandemic craze, you couldn't find product at an LGS, you couldn't find it at big box, but you could find it on the Pokemon Center website. They had everything listed for MSRP. They had ETBs for $40. They had booster boxes for $160. It's just at the time, people were not willing to pay that much for a booster box. And then when this latest craze, I don't want to call it a bubble because I don't think it's going to pop. I think it's just going to slowly peter off at some point 2 years in the future. But that was a huge change that I noticed in the past couple years is people just went to the Pokemon Center and was just like, you know what? I feel like this box is going to be valued at over MSRP, so I'm just going to buy whatever I can for $160, which was unheard of. Anything over $120 for a booster box was criminal. That no one bought directly from the Pokemon Center, but now that's seen as a direct outlet. Like if you want Destined Rivals, $160 for a booster box is an amazing price. For now, $50-$60 for an ETB, especially to get that Pokemon Center stamp, an absolute steal. But people weren't thinking that way, just a few years ago. You could find product readily available on the Pokemon Center. It was just at MSRP, so people weren't willing to pay those prices. The Pokemon Company may have to address that at some point and be like, you know what? A lot of what we're printing is frustrating people because, when it goes to big box, one person swoops in and buys everything. If it goes to an LGS, they get to control the prices, and we have no say in that. The Pokemon Company could just go like, well, we'll just put everything on Pokemon Center, we'll maintain our queues, and we'll limit product per person. Yeah, some bots are still going to slip in, but people seem to be happy with the queue system. People are happy on getting in, just getting the 1 or 2 ETBs that they want, and then waiting for a release date. And if that's the most fair way to distribute product, that's what's going to make people the happiest, then that may just be an avenue that they pump even more prints into. Something else that does factor into this huge complicated equation is the amount of market manipulation that the TCG has been experiencing. If you look at your Drowsies and other illustration areas where people are saying like, oh, it's impossible to get a 10, and you saw huge spikes in those cards that have now dipped, or even with like Greninja Star, and people saying promo cards are never going to get reprinted, there's only a limited amount of, everybody rush in. Or with the Stained Glass Birds promo, or what we're seeing with Bubble Mew, what we saw with Megas, like some of that is legitimately people going like, oh, I'm excited about Megas, I'm going to go buy all the old Megas and just do a Mega collection. But it's also a whole lot of pump and dump schemes where groups of people go, hey, this is the card that we're going to buy out, we're going to cause a craze, we're going to give some type of fake rationale for it, and we're going to artificially inflate the price, cash in on people's FOMO, and sell off everything we have at the peak, and then move on to the next thing, because there's so many different types of cards. There's so many different facets that you can manipulate within the Pokemon TCG to make people think that certain cards are worth more than they actually are. But we also have so many new people in the community that they're not market literate yet. They've not been around long enough to see all of these spikes and dips and market manipulations and buyouts. They don't know these types of things are going on. They just hear like, oh my god, this drowsy card, you got to get it now before it gets too expensive. Or like, oh man, these Greninja stars, like there's not a whole lot of them, you got to get what you can before they're all gone. But people still fall victim to it. But it does play into this larger feeling of scarcity within the TCG, because a lot of it is artificially created, not only because of people holding product, of people hoarding certain singles, just waiting them out to see what happens with the price. It's also just people creating multiple accounts on TCG Player, selling the same cards back and forth to each other or to themselves, making it seem like, oh yeah, like people are actually paying $700 for Bubble Mew. That must be the real value in it. So with that last video I posted, I did get a lot of mixed comments that I wanted to address, and hopefully I did that here today. A lot of people were saying like, yeah, I can't wait for more reprints to hit. I want to be able to find and enjoy the product, while a lot of people were like, printing more isn't going to fix anything because the people are the problem. And as long as those people are still sticking around, they're going to continue to buy up everything and create these types of toxicity and false scarcity in the market. And I will have to wait and see on who's right, if anyone is. When it comes to a consensus, I think this one guy nailed it with this comment here where he said, 3K subs channel, cope 'em, raffle, get a real camera at least if you're going to upload your wrong opinions. Absolutely right. If I had more subscribers, my opinion would become correct. So I do apologize for that. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get some subscribers in here. When it comes to the camera, done. I even figured out a way to like avoid all the glare that happens on my glasses. So you did motivate me to do that, and I appreciate you. But that's going to be all for today's video. We are just going to have to wait and see how all of these factors come together, how they impact the overall market. If we ever see a dip, or, the Pokemon Company could just come out with a curveball and go, oh, hey, actually, Rocket's Moltres UPC, we're going to reprint an SIR with a stamp on it. Who knows what's going to happen with that? How's that going to affect the secondary market? We just have to sit around and find out. Ultimately, that's the answer to everything I'm going to say on this channel is I have predictions. I have things that I think will happen that I anticipate based on past experiences. But when it comes right down to it, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. If you made it this far, I appreciate you greatly. Leave likes and comments and share the video. It all helps my channel. I'm still working on all the vintage stuff in the background. I also have a bunch of ideas for the weekly videos in the future, so stick around for those, and I will see you at the next one. Bye-bye.